Brazilian President Luis Lula da Silva has said that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to face trial, but that it should take place in a Venezuelan court rather than in the United States, where he is currently being held after his abduction by the U.S. military. Lula's comment came as Venezuela's acting president Delcy Rodriguez has been working to release hundreds of politicians, activists and lawyers jailed during Maduro's presidency, which began in 2013. The Brazilian has openly criticized the abduction of Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, in a military operation ordered by U.S. President Donald Trump on January 3. Maduro was flown to New York after his abduction in a bloody night raid on Caracas. He has since been accused by U.S. authorities of planning to transport drugs to the U.S. alongside other charges. Well, for more on this development, Rise international correspondent Rotimi Kade joins me now from Texas. Thank you, Rotimi. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've been following this development in the U.S. and, of course, in Brazil. President Lula has argued that Maduro should be tried in Venezuela rather than in the United States. Let me ask you, what are the legal and diplomatic implications of this stance, and how might these, or you think this will affect Brazil-U.S. relations?
Well, first of all, I think the diplomatic relations between Brazil and the U.S. Under the two leadership has actually gone haywire. Lula da Silva, who is a staunch Democrat, has been a staunch opposition of President Trump's policies and his style of government. And I think amongst all the Southern American leaders, he's the first person speaking out against the abduction of Nicolas Maduro. Now, to the point whether Maduro should be tried in the U.S. or maybe in Venezuela, well, from the get-go, you know that the adoption has been, found to be a little bit out of the norm. And going ahead to try a foreign president in another country, perhaps I really don't know the legality of the law, international law, but, from the face value, you want to say that perhaps maybe it should be taken to the International Criminal Court for him to face justice.
Excuse me. Well, let's say, look at some other area of interest. Of course, Lula has argued his position as defending national sovereignty and non-interference. To what extent, is this consistent with the longer, will I say, Brazil's long-standing foreign policy tradition in Latin America? Because this is more of a diplomatic intervention, isn't it?
Well, I would say yes. It's part of a diplomatic intervention from the Brazilian government under Lula leadership to see how he can use this little, avenue to speak out against the what they call the injustice or injustices being meted out to the post-Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. And perhaps maybe this is going to open the gateway to other South American leaders to speak up also. But of course, speaking up to President Trump, who perhaps maybe is going to fall on deaf ears. I don't know how this is going to really pan out with the current White House. Since Maduro's adoption, we've not heard so much about his prosecution or whether he's going to be taken back, or there's absolutely nothing that has been heard as far as the Venezuela government is concerned. The White House did say, well, they're going to be providing leadership by proxy, but no appointed leader since Maduro has been deposed. We've seen the vice president taking over, but of course, we understand without any equivocation that most likely she's going to be receiving orders from the White House. So it's a sort of it's the Burkle, for both the U.S. and Venezuela. And at this point, Brazil is taking it upon itself to see whether speaking out could be a way of normalizing, lives and politics in back home in Venezuela.
Okay. Well, given Lula's comment, because still staying around what he said about sovereignty, well, can Brazil really play a mediating role in resolving the Venezuelan crisis? Because questions are that what diplomatic avenues remain open between the U.S. And Brazil or Venezuela?
Well, I think, yes, of course, Brazil could play a huge role, knowing fully well that Brazil is perhaps the biggest economy in South America, and they share the same borders with Venezuela. So in that sense, Brazil could use their influence as a big brother, so to speak, to mediate. But at this time, since the relations between Brazil and U.S. has not been at the best, it could be a little bit an uphill task for Lula to speak with President Trump about it. If every one of them, or perhaps maybe, could look at their differences and just say, what, let's go to the round table and have a discussion about, what's the progress for Venezuela and the Southern American generally. So that is also, also a possibility that that could be explored.
I mean, critics continue to lend their voices to this conversation, and they are saying that a foreign leader in the U.S. court raises concern about international law and head of state immunity as well. Let's talk about the legal precedents. Well, of course, perhaps we may want to also talk about this as well. What legal precedent exists for trying a sitting or the post leader in a foreign court? Can we say that the intervention of Lula is on point or is coming at the right time?
Well, the intervention can come at a better time. I would tell you that the adoption in itself, or the kidnapping, as some people say, came as a shock to a lot of people because nobody actually expected that such things could happen in the 21st century. Things like that has happened in the past, but at this time when the world seems to be a little bit more advanced, a little bit more diplomatic, that kind of Gestapo, approach has not been experienced. But for some reason, the U.S. leadership under President Trump believe that Maduro is either an accessory or a main actor to the importation of hard drugs into the United States, which has killed so many people. That is yet to be proven in courts. If the Trump administration believes they have some very tangible evidence to prosecute him, that would be a number of reasons why they should. But again, you have to recall back that there's an order, for Maduro to actually, he has a case to answer in the U.S. court. And I think one of the main reasons why it was brought in to answer those cases, because he has a case already within one of the federal charges against him in proxy. So I believe perhaps maybe this is the reason why the U.S. government said, okay, you know what, maybe after this. But again, when you look at the international relations and how countries actually relate to each other. Uh, Perhaps maybe the most appropriate court to look at this could be the International Criminal Court in The Hague.
Well, Rotimi, as you know it, Delcy Rodriguez has been acting as interim president since Maduro has been detained abroad. Well, as Venezuelan interim government has passed, they also passed what we call amnesty law and released, some detainees. They are also working at the moment. Delcy is also working on releasing some activists and some politicians who have been detained by the government of Maduro. Speak to these issues as well. What does this signal about the country's internal political direction? Do you think the acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, is getting it right?
Well, I think what the acting president is trying to do is to unite the country after their leader was deposed, and granting amnesty to prisoners who were imprisoned by Maduro could actually quell some of the agitations in Venezuela. And I think that could be the right step in the right direction as far as getting the country back on its footing is concerned. But again, you don't forget that the acting president is also trying to see how there's a high possibility she could be a substantive president if she, cross all the T's and, dot all the I's and do the right thing and, for Venezuelan people to see that she could be the next leader that will take them out of the conundrum.
Let's talk some more on this particular conversation, because there are conversations or debate around the risk of setting geopolitical precedents, right? Let me ask you, what message does this situation send about the use of a military force in prosecuting international criminal allegations, just like in the case of Maduro?
I would say confusion, uncertainty, because right now the rest of the world do not understand how they can, approach or deal with the new leadership of the United States under President Donald Trump. President Donald Trump is quite unpredictable. Sometimes you could see him in the best of his, his way of approaching issues, and if you give him thumbs up for that. The other way, it could go the other side. So there's this massive, uncertainty that on how this countries or other countries relates to the U.S. In the case of, in the wake of the tariffs, for instance, how the U.S. came up with, some of these tariffs against other countries, and going back to what we just talked about, how Maduro also was deposed as a leader. So there's this, how do we deal with the U.S.? How do we curry the favor of the President Trump's administration in a way that we don't get in trouble and being made example of?
Okay. All right. Rotimi, of course, I'm going to keep you a little bit longer on the program, because we're seeing that news are trickling from U.S. President Donald Trump has hiked worldwide tariffs to 15% after the Supreme Court ruled his reciprocal tax plan was unconstitutional. Infuriated by the High Court's ruling, Trump ordered an immediate 10% tariff on all imports in addition to any existing tariff, citing a different law as the basis. Well, the new tariff is being applied under Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act, which allows the president to increase levies up to a maximum of 15%. Well, it has never been imposed before, making it an historic moment for the Trump administration. Well, this law, of course, allows him to impose the levy for 150 days, although it could face legal challenges. Well, Rotimi, of course, let's take a breather moment, and when we come back, we'll have this conversation. Glad to have you back there. You're watching Arise America, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. Well, as I told you earlier, President Donald Trump has hiked worldwide tariffs to 15% after the Supreme Court ruled his reciprocal tax plan was unconstitutional.
From coasting on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country.
Well, Rotimi Kade joins us again from Texas to throw more light on Trump's recent global tariff hike of 15%. Thank you once again for holding on, Rotimi. Well, President Trump is now relying on Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act. What exactly does this law permit, and under what conditions do you think these can be used?
Well, that's a very good question. The law actually permits the United States to impose reciprocal tariffs if need be, but without any unilateral, what I would say, unilateral decision. So the spirit of the letter is actually to see a collaboration between the White House and Congress, and more importantly, is for Congress to actually give that approval. And I think that's the argument that the Supreme Court justices are making, that you don't do that unilaterally. You need the approval of the Congress to actually see how they can balance the international and diplomatic relations with other countries.
And when you look at these, a report is saying that this provision has never been invoked before. But how vulnerable is it to fresh legal challenges? I mean, and again, how is the world going to react to this time around?
Well, we know that there are a lot of legal challenges already brewing as a result of this. The White House did say they're going to appeal this judgment, and seem probably is going to the lower court and come back to the Supreme Court to address the same issue, because President Trump believes that this is constitutional and he has the right to do, what he's doing right now. He believes the United States have not been the best, getting back, what they're giving out in terms of trade and benefits to other country. And the President Trump believes that this is the right way to go. So is not happy about it from what you see right there. He lashes out at, Supreme Court justices, especially the conservative justices, like, the Chief Justice Robert, Chief Justice Robert, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and Justice Gorsuch. These are conservative justices that's, went against the president's, emergency tariffs imposition and policy. So this, in some way, has created that, chasm between, the bench and, of course, the White House. We'll see how that is going to go. But I think the White House is obviously going to see how this is going to be appealed.
I mean, the law only allows, the tariff for 115 days. But the question is, what happens next after that period expires? Can he escape this time around?
Well, I think that the president, when the president in some ways actually imposed tariffs to a foreign country, that has expiration date. The expiration date is to give both countries to actually come back to the round table and see how they can normalize, or will I say, sort out the issue to see whether there's any inequalities and how they can resolve the issue. But as you know, after the expiration, there's a high possibility that the president can still issue another one, and is going to go in continuum, and perhaps maybe that's a tool that the president is willing to use because he has the powers to do so.
I think a good place to leave it. Arise international correspondent Rotimi Kade, thank you for your time.